Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud. Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. A reminder to make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Blair, we like to kind of give an update for people on where we are in the calendar because it seems kind of random here in April. There's no major headlines that we need to get to, but it sounds like today is the start of the evaluation period. What does that mean?
That means that college coaches are now able to officially hit the road and evaluate in person to begin scouting and to basically maybe validate some offers, right? The players that they offered early on, they could maybe offer new players or take a look at some of the young classes as well. So it kicks off and it runs through May 25th. And obviously there's a lot going on in the world of college football recruiting right now, commitments, spring games, the transfer portal is opening up. So although we are in April, like you mentioned, Emily, it seems like we're caught in a whirlwind right now.
That's right. A lot is happening. And so we plan to update you on everything that is happening in the world of recruiting on today's show. But first, let's start with just reminding you what the top classes in the 2025 cycle are right now. Currently, Ohio State has officially supplanted longtime number one Notre Dame. That's going to happen when 10 of your 13 total commits are part of the top 247, 3 in the top 10 nationally. Then you still have Notre Dame there up at the top at number 2 with 19 commits, LSU, USC, Clemson, all rounding out the top 5. Joining the show now, national recruiting analyst Tom Loy is here to break down some big visits during spring games over the weekend. And let's go ahead and start with the top class in the cycle. That is Ohio State. They had quite a few high-profile visitors in the house. I will say an absolutely packed house at the shoe this weekend, and they're reaping the rewards already of having all those visitors in. So what does landing 4-star tight end Nate Roberts and safety Cody Haddad mean to this 2025 group early on?
It was a heck of a weekend in Columbus, and things got better. Cody Haddad committing. Ohio State is fired up to land that safety. The staff looks at him as one of the more underrated defensive backs in the country. He's a guy that sees somebody that's going to surprise as a senior and then somebody that's going to play and potentially be an early contributor in Columbus. So they're really, really fired up about that one. And then with Nate Roberts, man, Ohio State could not be more excited about this one, just to finally get it done. I mean, it's been a long road. They've been battling. Once he was committed to Notre Dame, they lost out there. Then a lot of people thought it was going to be Oklahoma. I kind of stood steadfast with my crystal ball that I put in early for Ohio State, and it all worked out. Tight ends coach Keenan Bailey. Nobody recruited him harder than anybody in the country. And not only did he do a good job with connecting with Nate, but it was his family. He did a great job of pushing all the right buttons with everybody in the Roberts family, second cousins, grandparents. I mean, he did a phenomenal job. So he made it a point to make him a priority, and it paid off. But I've seen Nate Roberts multiple times in person. I like him a lot. I think he's one of the more complete tight ends in the country. I really do love this get for the Buckeyes.
A lot of the recruits that were in the horseshoe were there to see the former number one player in the class for 2024, Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver. And I joked with him in San Antonio earlier this year, Tom, about Brian Hartline's recruiting pitch. You could probably seal his mouth shut and he would still be able to just point at a few posters, you know, Jackson Smith, Nick Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, just to name a few. One player in this current cycle that is hearing that pitch is Jamie French. What's the latest intel on the dynamic wide receiver?
I still really like Ohio State for Jamie French. Brian Hartline obviously leading the charge, and nobody seems to be pushing all the right buttons quite like the Buckeyes, and especially with Hartline running it. French continues to state that he's going to take all of his official visits. He wants to take his time. He was once committed to Bama, and now he wants to slow it down and make sure the second decision is the right one. But he's going to make trips to Tennessee and Texas, along with Florida State, potentially Miami. I think he's going to, I feel confident saying he's going to get back to Ohio State. But despite, positive chatter and vibes, when you talk to people connected with the Longhorns, the Volunteers, I think the one that Ohio State fans need to watch closely is the, Miami Hurricanes. I think in state, they're doing the best job. They are looking for redemption. You brought up Jeremiah Smith. They lost out late on him last cycle. They would love any shot at redemption, payback, after missing on Jeremiah Smith. So they would love to do that with Jamie French.
Yeah, and if you need a reminder of just how close that recruitment was with Jeremiah Smith, the look on Ryan Day's face when he found out in that press conference, just the sheer excitement and just feeling good about that. So yeah, Miami definitely looking some redemption there. Meanwhile, a lot of interest in watching Kalen DeBoer's debut with the Tide. I know I was tuned in, and that was evident by the amount of just top recruits at Bryant-Denny this weekend. And one liked what he saw already. That's four-star linebacker Jaden Harmon. He committed to the Tide over the weekend. What are they getting in him?
They see a guy that's a genuine day one impact guy and a future difference maker. He's a productive talent that is coming off an excellent junior season. There was a lot of heavy hitters in this one. You're looking at Oregon, Ohio State, A&M, many others. But in the end, the Crimson Tide sealed the deal. They are thrilled to have him locked in. And this was a really nice get. I know that when I was talking to Brett Greenberg, he was saying how fired up everybody in that building is. And Brett does a great job over at our Bama 24/7 site. So Alabama's getting a good one. I think he's a really good player. So nice win.
Tom, that was A Day. There's also G Day down in Athens. The Masters wasn't the only big event in the Peach State this past weekend as Georgia held their spring game, and they had a who's who list of recruits as well. And one name that headlined that group was Justice Terry, a player that flipped from the Bulldogs to USC earlier this offseason. What's the latest intel on Justice Terry and where the Georgia Bulldogs stand with him?
Getting Justice Terry, a Peach State native, getting him back on campus, he's committed to USC. This is a big deal, but to be honest, let's be honest, this was very much expected. I don't think anybody expected Terry to commit to the Trojans and completely shut it down and be over with this process. So for Georgia, you can expect him back on campus multiple times before his process completely comes to a close. I was told the staff did a great job this weekend of laying out everything, showing him what a future would look like if he stays at home with the Dogs, and it seems to resonate really well with him. So I think Georgia's just in a really good spot. They're moving the needle, just trying to kind of continue that relationship and then get him to feeling, more happy to be home in Georgia.
That flip from Georgia to USC just happened about 3 weeks ago. We're still talking about the interest in the Dogs. What are some other prospects that came away impressed after visiting for G-Day?
I think Georgia's in a really good spot for a couple top 247 guys. Cornerback Dijon Lee, receiver Travis Smith Jr., offensive lineman Dontrell Glover, a guy who they like at center, and then linebacker, safety, just do it all defensive standout Eric Winters. But for Lee, I think Dante Williams is a guy that could be the difference maker in their pursuit of him. I think he's going to be, the guy that if Dijon ends up picking Georgia, it's all because it's playing for Dante. But with Glover, Georgia's doing a really good job there. I know Benjamin Wolk was raving about their chances there and just saying that Georgia's doing a really good job. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him lock in an official visit soon. Travis Smith always talks highly of Georgia. He's a top target and a long-time top target for Georgia. But James Coley, ever since he became the receivers coach, he's pushing all the right buttons for him, making him a priority, and they seem to be in a good spot. And then with Winters, most people think it's Auburn right now, and I'd probably agree that they're the team to beat. Maybe before this weekend. I think Georgia's doing a really good job. I think they're cementing themselves as a true finalist and an impact finalist heading into his final visits before he makes a decision, which is probably coming sooner rather than later. But watch out for Miami too. I think that a lot of people were sleeping on him early on, and then a visit to Coral Gables kind of shook things up. So keep an eye on those three teams when it comes to winners.
The Hurricanes are pushing for another top 10 class. You just brought them up. A little further south was also their spring game, headlined by the number 1 and number 2 interior offensive linemen in this 2025 recruiting cycle. How big was this weekend for the Hurricanes, Tom?
This weekend was extremely important for Miami. They had multiple top targets on campus and seemed to, move the needle with them. But the weekend started off with a bang. You had top 247 tight end Brock Schott, a guy from right here in my backyard in Indiana. He announced his commitment to Miami, so that was huge. But all in all, Miami feels really good about Florida State offensive line commit Solomon Thomas. He was there Friday and Saturday. Him and his mom were decked out in Miami gear, according to Gabby Urrutia, who was all over this over at our Cane site. But Florida State still expects him in the class, but watch out for the Hurricanes. It's clear Miami made a big move with top 100 offensive lineman S.J. Alufa-Tuli over at Bishop Gorman. This was a big visit for his family, especially with his mom. He hit me up earlier today and was raving about the trip. My crystal ball is on the Hurricanes, and I feel even better about it after him getting on campus. I mean, he was talking about the academics, the athletics, just all in all, a really good visit. And then really lastly, Nate Marshall, he visited, a top 100 kid out of Illinois. He connected with Marquise Lightfoot, who signed with the Hurricanes last year. He already knows Justin Scott, another Illinois native, he was there. So just all in all, Miami seems to be pushing all the right buttons. They're moving in the right direction. I love what the staff is doing. We talk about them all the time, but I think overall they helped themselves a ton this weekend, and they're moving in the right direction. Mario Cristobal has to be really happy about the direction of everything. Now he just needs to close.
Yeah, Hurricanes fans watching right now, I'm sure they were keeping tabs of how many times I heard Miami during that segment, and it was quite a bit, Tom. So that really illustrates just how much momentum this program has right now. Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. You can catch out more of his work. He is a frequent guest on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast with our friends Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna. As a reminder, new episodes drop every Tuesday and Wednesday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, or of course, listen wherever you get your podcasts. All right, looks like we're talking about Husan Longstreet right now, who made his commitment official over the weekend, picking the Texas A&M Aggies. He is the top prospect in the state of California, which is where we go next on the show, and you might have seen him pop up just a few seconds ago. And I guess if we're being honest, guys, Blair has been in California this entire time, but now I'm going to officially be outnumbered. Let's welcome in national recruiting analyst Greg Biggins, who is here in the background with us. Greg, Husan Longstreet is going to be an Aggie. That was a very exciting recruitment yesterday. You watched it go down on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. How did Mike Elko and this new staff pull it off?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a relationship business, right? I've been saying that for years, recruiting wise. People talk about, X and O's and academics and, scheme fit, but it always comes down to relationships. And Husan had the best relationship with Coach Elko. They made him an immediate priority. Coach Klein also did an unbelievable job connecting. Back December, January, he was probably leaning to UCLA or Washington. Obviously, those two coaching staffs kind of disappeared on him. Coach Kelly, obviously, for UCLA. Coach DeBoer went to Bama. And that kind of opened the door for A&M. And again, priority-wise, loved it. He's been to College Station multiple times. He kind of likes the small-town feel of College Station. He likes the offensive scheme fit, loves the staff, loves the opportunity to play, depth chart-wise. Kind of checked off all the boxes for him. So A&M able to rally a little bit. Got kind of close toward the end there. In fact, he almost delayed the announcement if Auburn kind of, made a big late push, but, A&M, credit to them. Great job of the staff and able to seal the deal with one of our favorite quarterbacks.
Greg, this was a player that just picked up the offer from A&M 3 months ago. Among those final four schools, the Aggies were the most recent offer. Obviously, they close and they get one of the best prospects at the quarterback position in this current class. You hinted at it a little bit there. It was really close down the stretch, and at the finish line, it looked like Auburn could be eking them out. How closely are you going to be monitoring Husan Longstreet moving forward, heading into this spring eval period and heading into the summer?
I will be watching it, but not because of those schools. If there's another school that could potentially creep in, there's always been a little bit of USC buzz, believe it or not. And, they got Juju Lewis already committed. But as Tom's been kind of saying multiple times, schools are still recruiting Julian actively, Georgia, Bama. If something were to happen with Julian, I could see USC going on Longstreet. And I think that might interest him just a little bit. I do think he likes A&M right now. But like you kind of mentioned it, Blair, Auburn was really the school that made a lot of noise that last week to week and a half. I was talking to some of the guys on this team, talking to some of the coaches at Centennial, and they thought Auburn was going to get him. They thought, A&M led for probably the previous 2 months. But those last 48 to 72 hours, he didn't know. Like, he literally told me he woke up on Sunday morning, and he didn't have a final decision yet. Kind of family rallied together one last time around 11 o'clock Pacific time. They decided on A&M for his 2 o'clock announcement. So got pretty close toward the end. Auburn did a great job as well. But again, relationship-wise, it was for the Aggies.
Oh, I love that behind the scenes look. We always just assume that they know exactly what they're going to do. They're just waiting for us to get the YouTube stream up. But it sounds like, man, this was a stressful one down the stretch. How do you anticipate Longstreet fitting into Cullen Klein's offense if he does stick with the Aggies?
I mean, I love the fit. I think the reason why we like Husan so much, he's a kid. He fits any offense, any scheme. Obviously there's some similarities to his Centennial offense. He's a lot of motions, a lot of shotgun, a lot of quick reads, get the ball out, multiple, whether we go heavy with the tight ends, whether they go 4 wide. So I think Husan, gifted arm. You've heard, Cooper multiple times say he might have the best arm talent in this year's quarterback class. He can absolutely rip the football. 11-inch hands. What does that mean? It means he absolutely can spin the heck out of the football. He can rip it through conditions, rain, wind. Me and Blair have seen him a few times this offseason. He's getting bigger, stronger. He's 6'1", 6'1.5" now. He's added another dimension last season, meaning he can run. Before he was a little more stationary as a pocket guy, but he's got some escapability. He can extend plays. Deep ball accuracy is the one thing I keep saying, hey, I want to see him improve it a little bit because he's throwing a lot of fastballs, mixing maybe a changeup or two on the deeper throws, but gifted athlete, gifted quarterback, great leader. I mean, he's all about football. You talk to his coaches, and Blair did, man. All he cares about is ball. That's it. He's not a party guy. He's a good student, but he loves football. And right now, I think he fits that A&M scheme really well.
Really motivated, really competitive, and that's the type of player that the Aggies are adding to this recruiting class. GB, you've been doing this for a long time, and you've heard this phrase for decades. The quarterback becomes the face of the recruiting class. The recruit turns into a recruiter. What is on the list for Husan Longstreet moving forward, and who is he targeting?
Yeah, no, I asked him that yesterday. I said, hey, I need some names. Give me a couple guys who you're going to go after. And I think he's going to be a very active recruiter. Obviously, there's some in-state talent in Texas. There always is. Khalid Lockett, our number 2 wide receiver. He's a huge fan of him. Kelshawn Henry, another in-state guy. CJ Wiley out of Georgia. Fun fact, his dad, Chuck, is a good friend. Go Lakers. Shout out to CJ. So he wants receivers, man. He listed all 3 of those guys. I don't know if A&M is a leader for any of those 3, but I think they are a leader. I would say top 5, top 6 for all 3 of them. So receiver-wise, he mentioned a few offensive linemen as well, but we'll keep it with those wide receivers. And, for me, if I'm a receiver, man, I want to play with Husan Longstreet. He gets me the ball. He gets the ball early in space. Again, opportunity to make a lot of plays on offense. So we'll see. Husan, we know he's a great football player. We'll see what kind of recruiter he is by the way he recruits some of the wide receiver and offensive line talent for the Aggies.
I love it. While we're on the topic of quarterbacks, I did want to mention real quick, this just in today, 4-star quarterback Ryan Montgomery is set to commit with us Wednesday at 3:00 Eastern. He is the number 12 quarterback in the class right now. So you can watch him pick between Georgia, Florida, Michigan, South Carolina, and Penn State. That's all right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Greg, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Exciting weekend for the quarterbacks and an exciting weekend for the Aggies. You can read up more about all things Texas A&M at gigem247.com. They are your headquarters for all things Texas A&M and the new staff coming in and everything that's happening around them. So be sure to read all about it on gigem247.com. This is a crazy time for recruiting, but also for the transfer portal because the spring portal window will open tomorrow, which means that it's free agency once again. A reminder of the transfer class rankings after the winter window. You got Ole Miss and Portal King Kiffin up at the top. Number 1, a new age in Aggieland means a big haul for Texas A&M, Oregon, Florida State, Louisville, all rounding out that top 5, and a team you're very familiar with at number 6 when it comes to talking about the transfer portal in Colorado. So by the time we wake up tomorrow, the transfer portal will be open, but I can guarantee you that our next guest will have already been up for hours, if not for days, because I'm still not convinced that our friend Matt Zenitz ever sleeps, but we are very thankful that he is here with us to preview the madness. Matt, what are your overall expectations for just how chaotic tomorrow will be?
I'll definitely be busy. Okay.
You'll be doing something.
Okay. The thing I'll say there, so the winter cycle, so this is obviously the second of the 2 transfer portal windows. The first cycle, on the first day, there were 530 FBS scholarship players that went into the portal. I will say I'm pretty confident that it's not going to be quite to that same level to tomorrow. I think this window compared to the winter one is going to be more of a steady progression in terms of guys going in, especially with more than half of Power 4 teams around the country still being in the midst of spring ball right now. So if you look back at last year, the past is always a good predictor of the future. Last year, the first 3 days of the window being open during the spring, it was somewhere around 190 FBS scholarship players that went in during the first 3 days of that window being open. So I think it'll probably be somewhere in that 150, 200 range tomorrow. So eventful, but not quite to the level of what we saw during the winter.
Matt, we've been through this process now for a couple of years, and I think coaches and personnel staffers are getting more accustomed to roster management and how they're going to construct their team. What are they expecting out of this spring portal cycle?
I think the expectation, and this has been pretty consistent on my end, just in my conversations with combination of head coaches, people at the personnel level, that probably 90% or so of players that go in this cycle will be back end of the roster type guys that either are in search of more playing time that schools are moving on from, combined with group of 5 and FCS players that are looking to make the move up to a bigger program, to a higher level, move similar to what you saw with guys like Trey Amos, Jalen Key last year. I would say, if I had to guess right now, just based on continued feedback that I've gotten, that will probably represent the vast majority of guys that go in during the course of these next 2 weeks.
And possibly one of the biggest names that's expected in the portal when it opens tomorrow is a guy who's already announced his intentions. It's Oregon State running back Damian Martinez. What is the latest with his new recruitment?
So who will officially pop up in the portal at some point in the next couple of days, maybe as soon as tomorrow? I would expect some schools like Miami to be involved in that one. Miami definitely interested in adding a portal running back. Damian is going to end up being at the very least one of the top overall players that goes in this cycle. Probably the top player at running back position, was a first team all Pac-12 selection last year. And to go along with Miami, I would think that Mississippi State, even after adding Rashad Amos during the course of the last couple of days, could potentially try to get involved there, get him in for a visit. And there are some other schools I know definitely doing their due diligence right now, looking into a player that obviously a high-level guy that did some great stuff and was very productive at Oregon State the last couple of years.
Matt, what is the market for Penn State transfer Keandre Lambert-Smith, who obviously announced his intent earlier today? And on that same note, Arkansas offensive tackle Andrew Chambly, what does his roadmap look like?
Yeah, so I'll start with Keandre. Keandre is going to be probably one of the top players to go along with someone like Damian Martinez that goes in during the course of this cycle. Someone who going into last season had already done enough that one of the scouting services that NFL teams use had him with a 4th round grade going into the season, and then ended up leading Penn State in catches last year. Now he's moving on, and I know, even though it's still at a relatively early point right now, that there have been several SEC schools that I've had contact with in the last couple of days that very much have him on the radar as a person of interest. But at the same time, when you have a player of this magnitude, I'm sure he will have no shortage of options. And it's not like this is one where he goes in and you have an immediate feel for just who the favorite is. This one is still very early in the process. I just know and can say very confidently that he's going to be a popular guy and popular option for teams in the market for a wide receiver. And then as far as Andrew Chambly, so Andrew was starting left tackle last year for Arkansas, former top 200 recruit, was an all SEC freshman team selection last year, now set to officially go in the portal at some point in the next couple of days. And the expectation is that he's going to take visits first to UCLA, to Kansas State to go along with that, Colorado, another team in the mix. And I'm blanking on the third school. Virginia Tech is another one that is expected to visit to go along with that. We'll see if anybody else gets involved to go along with those 4. But those look like currently the 4 top options for him at this point.
I'll add this too. Our Clint Brewster, who is part of the transfer portal rankings team, has officially gone out on Twitter and said that Keandre Lambert-Smith is the top wide receiver available in the portal right now. So I'm sure you'll hear his name floated around quite a bit. Matt, thank you so much for being here. I know you're gearing up for a big day tomorrow, as are we here at 24/7 Sports. It is Transfer Portal Palooza all over again. It's kicking off at 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Cooper Patagna will be with a host of analysts and guests as they react to breaking news in real time and get you updated on who's in and who's out. Also happening on this page the day after tomorrow, on Wednesday, do not forget 4-star quarterback Ryan Montgomery will commit with us Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. All my fans of Georgia, Florida, Michigan, South Carolina, Penn State, make sure that you are tuned in to find out where one of the top uncommitted quarterbacks in 2025 is headed. That's it. That's our show. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.